There are places in the galaxy where even light forgets its name. Worlds so shrouded in silence that the Astronomican's holy fire fades to a whisper, and the machine god's logic falters like a candle drowning in its own wax. They are not charted on any data slate, not marked by any navigator's map. Yet every soul who has felt their pull carries the same scar, a memory that should not exist. It begins as a whisper in a vox, a signal that should have died long ago, yet refuses to. Some say it is a call from the Emperor himself, reaching beyond the veil to reclaim what was lost. Others, older and less devout, claim it is something far older, something that stirs in the dark corners of reality, the corners even he cannot reach. Once, a fragment of a fleet found such a place. It drifted far from its route, guided by an anomaly that bled to the warp like a wound that would not heal. No one remembers the name of that world, only the stories, spoken in reverent fear by the few who returned, their eyes hollowed by truths the Imperium would rather burn than record. It was said that on that planet, the laws of faith and matter broke, and the Emperor's light did not shine. It was a place even the throne could not see. If the idea of such forbidden places stirs something within you, that quiet ache to know what should never be known, then stay. Like the explorators of the Adeptus Mechanicus, we walk not for glory but for understanding. Subscribe, share, and lend your voice to the choir that keeps these stories alive. For in the grim darkness of the far future, only stories remain to light the dark. They said the void was silent. They lied. It begins with a hum, not a sound heard through ears, but a vibration that finds its way into the bones, deep and patient. It is a kind of sound that does not come from machines or from men, but from the space between both. The ship Gloria Tenebris had been adrift for 73 solar days, its warp engines cooling after a misjump that had carried it far from Imperial lanes. Her hull bore the scars of micrometeorite impacts, and the golden aquila on her prow was cracked, its wings dim beneath layers of ash and dust. The crew had stopped praying days ago. When a vessel loses contact with the Astronomican, faith becomes fragile. The navigator, bound in his sanctum beneath veils of incense and auspex light, had confessed to seeing nothing but static in the immaterium. His voice trembled as he whispered through the vox, "The light is gone. I can no longer find the throne." Captain Lira Voss listened in silence, one hand resting on the console, where the ship's chronometer flickered between seconds that no longer agreed with one another. The crew's morale had begun to rot in the long dark. Rations had been reduced, tempers drawn thin. Only the ship's chaplain, Brother Helix, still carried a flame in his voice when he recited litanies to the Emperor each cycle, though even his tone had grown brittle, as if afraid to echo too loudly in the quiet. It was during one such litany that the hum began, a ripple in the void, a note that should not exist. The Vox operators leaned closer to their consoles, frowning at static that did not behave like static. Helix paused mid-prayer, his words faltering as the frequency rose and fell like a heartbeat. "Captain," murmured the Vox adept, "we're receiving something. Not Imperial code, not Mechanicus," he hesitated, turning pale beneath the glow of the cogitator. "It's ancient." Lira approached. The sound resolved into fragments, faint but deliberate, a pattern woven into distortion. She ordered the data slate recorders to capture every byte. Slowly, through layers of interference, a voice began to emerge. It was female, human, yet the cadence was strange, formal in a way that recalled pre-Imperial dialects of High Gothic. "We are still here," it said, broken by bursts of static. "The Emperor cannot see us." Every head on the bridge turned. No one breathed. For a long moment, only the hum of the ship's systems filled the air. Then, Helix stepped forward. "Blasphemy," he whispered. "A trick of the warp. Shut it down." But the Mechanicus Muggos, a spindly figure of chrome and cables, raised a clawed hand. "Negative. Signal is coherent. Pattern repeats every 31 seconds. It is real." Captain Voss narrowed her eyes at the Muggos, then at the wavering voice that seemed to drift like smoke through the vox. "Origin. Unknown," the adept replied. "Triangulation indicates a planetary mass, approximately 2 light days from current vector." The captain hesitated. 2 light days into uncharted void. No support, no route home. And yet, the words linger like an infection. We are still here. The Emperor cannot see us. That night, or what passed for night aboard the Gloria Tenebris, Lira stood in her private sanctum, staring at the ship's cracked insignia. The candlelight flickered as if disturbed by unseen breath. Her data slate glowed dimly with the decoded fragments of the signal. Each repetition grew clearer, as though the voice knew it was being heard. She played it again. We are still here. The Emperor cannot see us. Her hands trembled. The phrase carried a strange gravity, not defiance, but sorrow, as if the speaker mourned the loss of his sight. By the third cycle, the signal strengthened. The Vox channels began to carry it even when disconnected. Servitors started muttering the phrase under mechanical breath. Though their Vox grills were disabled, the Mechanicus adepts blamed residual data bleed. Yet their optics flickered with unease. Brother Helix declared the phenomenon an abomination. We are being tested, he said during the next sermon. The Emperor watches, even when his light is dimmed. This is the whisper of something foul, something that envies faith. The Navigator disagreed. No, it is a call. He was pale as third, I veiled by silk as always, but his voice carried a quiet awe. I've seen its source. Now in the warp, outside it, like a wound that bleeds light instead of darkness. It calls to us. Lira listened to them argue in the chapel, the incense thick and choking. She wanted to believe Helix, but something in her bones had already decided otherwise. There was a pull, subtle but undeniable, as if gravity itself were whispering her name. By the 5th cycle, she gave the order to follow it. The Mechanicus crew labored in silence, plotting coordinates that should not exist, calculating a route through a void that offered no warp signature. As the ship turned, the stars seemed to shift, not moving, but changing, their light bending as though unseen hands pressed against the glass of reality. The Geller field hummed uneasily. Hours passed. The signal grew louder. Word became sentences. Sentences became fragments of prayer. It was no longer a simple broadcast. It was liturgy. He made us in sight, but forgot his shadow. The blind sun cannot burn what it cannot see. Return to the place that was never named. The Vox adept began to bleed from his nose. His console shorted out. The Muggos recorded everything, muttering data cant that sounded disturbingly like prayer. In her quarters, Lira dreamed of a planet surrounded by mist, its surface veined with golden light that pulsed like the veins of a living creature. When she awoke, her pillow was wet with tears. She could not recall why she had cried. As they neared the coordinates, the Gloria Tenebris' auspex began to fail. Long-range scans showed nothing, no debris, no celestial body. Yet proximity alarms wailed as if they were approaching a vast mass. The crew grew restless. One engineer took his own life, scrawling a single phrase in oil on the bulkhead before ending it. He cannot see. Captain Voss did not order it cleaned. She only stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Maybe that's why we can." When they finally emerged into real space, the void seemed different, thicker. The stars around them dimmed, as though something vast hung, invisible between them and the cosmos. The instruments detected a gravitational anomaly, a sphere of distortion large enough to eclipse a world, yet completely lightless. Then, without warning, the signal ceased. Silence. Not the usual hum of the void, not the hiss of radiation. Absolute, smothering quiet. The kind that devours sound itself. Helix fell to his knees, clutching his rosarius. We should turn back. This place is cursed. But Lira stepped closer to the viewport. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness ahead, where the stars bent around something unseen. And then she saw it, a faint glimmer, far within that shadow, flickering like a dying candle. "Prepare the landing parties," she said. "We're going down." The bridge crew hesitated, frozen between fear and duty. Lira turned slowly, her voice quiet but unyielding. "If the Emperor cannot see this place, then perhaps it's ours to witness in his stead." The words felt heavier than steel. No one answered. But deep within the ship's structure, the Vox crackled again, faint, like a breath against glass. "We are waiting." The sound died and the hum returned. The Gloria Tenebris turned toward the unseen world, its engines whispering through the dark. The Emperor's light did not follow. The descent began in silence. The Gloria Tenebris's dropship, Saint Varella's promise, drifted through the void like a seed cast into a barren field. Its hull creaked as it cut through layers of unseen resistance. Not air, not matter, but something heavier, as if the void itself resented intrusion. No planetary mass appeared on Auspex, yet the artificial gravity shifted, dragging the vessel downward. Inside, the air was thick with fear disguised as discipline. Bolter-clad armsmen checked their weapons with mechanical precision, each movement a prayer against madness. Muggos Etrax whispered inherent blessings over his data spools, his metallic limbs twitching as though in silent argument with unseen data. Captain Lira Voss sat near the forward viewport, her armor polished but unadorned. The symbol of the Aquila at her collar had been rubbed nearly smooth from touch. Across from her, Chaplain Helix murmured prayers to the throne, his voice low but steady. "Do you believe this is his will?" she asked quietly. Helix's eyes, pale as parchment, rose to meet hers. "Everything is his will, even when it feels like punishment." Lira nodded, though her gaze remained fixed ahead. Through the glass, there was nothing, just a void. And then, slowly, the faint outline of a world revealed itself. It did not appear as a sphere, but as a wound. A vast rent in the darkness, edges shimmering with faint light, like cauterized flesh. Within its boundary, the stars bent and twisted, pulled into spirals that refused to obey the laws of space. "Throne preserve us," murmured one of the armsmen. The Muggos tilted his head, lenses focusing and refocusing in rapid succession, sensor feedback inconsistent, topography unreadable, yet gravitational constant suggests the surface. "Take us in," Lira said. The descent was unlike any the crew had endured. The ship shuddered violently as the darkness thickened, the sound of the engines muffled as though wrapped in cloth. Through the viewport, pale streaks of light appeared, not lightning but rivers of energy that wound to the clouds like veins of molten gold. They pulsed faintly, in rhythm with something vast and slow, a heartbeat perhaps, or the echo of one. The landing strut struck solid ground with a low, hollow clang. The external lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting long spears of illumination into the mist. For the first time in Imperial history, human eyes looked upon a world that had no name. The soil was glass, not vitrified by heat, but formed from layers of transparent stone that reflected faint, wandering lights beneath its surface. The air shimmered faintly, and the distant horizon curved unnaturally, as if reality itself had bent to fit around something buried deep below. "Atmosphere is breathable," reported Etrax. "Composition within survivable variants. Radiation minimal. Curiously, no biological traces." "Then something else made this," Lira replied, stepping down the ramp. Her boots met the glass ground with a sound like breaking ice. Each step echoed unnaturally far, bouncing back from unseen structures. The mist thinned, revealing shapes, towers, monuments, pillars rising from the plain. Their surfaces bore carvings in a language that was neither High Gothic nor Mechanicus code. The symbols were circular, interlocking, like eyes that stare without blinking. Helix's voice trembled as he raised his torch. "These are not the works of man." The Muggos extended a mechadendrite, tracing the nearest glyph. Unknown material composition. Resonance suggests crystalline lattice, fused at the molecular level. This construction predates the age of technology. The captain walked among the ruins, her breath visible in the chill. Each monument hummed faintly when passed, responding proximity like a living thing. The air itself vibrated with low, melodic tones, forming harmonies that seemed almost deliberate. Then the Vox units crackled again. At first it was static. Then the same voice they'd heard aboard the ship spoke, clearer now, as though standing beside them. "Welcome to the place that was never named." Helix lifted his weapon. "Identify yourself." No response, only the wind, whispering through unseen structures. Then, faintly, we waited for his eyes, but they never came. The mist swirled and the temperature dropped sharply. Frost bloomed across the monuments in patterns that resembled circuitry, glowing faintly gold, pulsing in time with the rhythm beneath their feet. Etrax bent low, scanning, energy reading increasing, deep subsurface structure detected, depth indeterminate. Could be a manufactorum? One armsman asked hopefully. Negative. Output not mechanical. It is organic. A long silence followed. Then, without warning, the ground shuddered. A low vibration rolled to plain, knocking dust from unseen heights. The glassy soil beneath their boots rippled like water, and the mist parted to reveal something vast on the horizon, a tower, impossibly tall, rising from the center of the world. It was built from the same translucent material, but within its depths moved shadows, slow, deliberate, shifting like thoughts. Lira's voice was calm, but her pulse thundered in her throat. We moved toward the tower. Halix gripped his crozius tighter. Captain, this world is wrong. The Emperor's light cannot reach here. She met his gaze. Then we carried ourselves. They advanced. Every step brought new unease. Their auspex readings fluctuated wildly. Time itself seemed to stretch and contract. The sound of their own breathing arrived a moment too late, their footsteps echoing before they were made. When they reached the base of the tower, they found an entrance, a perfect circle, smooth and black, carved into the structure as though melted open. Faint light glowed from within, pulsing like the veins of some great creature. Etrax approached first, instruments clattering. Interior temperature stable. Radiation negligible. Energy reading suggests internal mechanism awake. Halix touched the wall and recoiled as if burned. It lives. The captain looked into the aperture. Beyond the threshold, the air shimmered. Images flickered. The surface of Terra beneath golden skies, the spires of the Imperial Palace gleaming in morning light. Then, a blink and it was gone. Inside, she ordered. The moment they crossed the threshold, sound returned. A distant, rhythmic pulse, not mechanical, not biological. A sound between both. The walls glowed faintly as they moved, reacting to their presence. Hallways branched outward in patterns that seemed to shift when not watched. Then, at the far end of the chamber, they saw it, a dais of transparent crystal, upon which rested an object unlike any Imperial technology. A sphere, golden and cracked, its surface alive with crawling light. Inside it flickered shapes, human silhouettes, countless, whispering without sound. Halix fell to his knees. Emperor, forgive me, they are praying. The Muggos raised the scanners. Odd. Energy signature, identical to the Astronomican, but distorted. Lira stepped closer. The air thickened, heavy as grief. For a heartbeat, she thought she could hear the voices. Thousands of them, murmuring in unison, each one filled with pain and longing. Then the voice returned, surrounding them from every direction. You found us. The unseen. The forgotten. Lira swallowed hard. Who are you? There was silence, then, softly. We were his sight, until he turned away. The golden sphere pulsed once. Light swept through the chamber, and the world seemed to tilt. The last thing they heard before the darkness came was a sound of weeping, not human, not machine. Something older, something that had been waiting too long to be remembered. When light returned, it was no longer the color of gold. The chamber had changed. Where once there had been smooth glass walls and gentle light, now the surfaces writhed with slow, viscous motion, as if the very material the tower were breathing. The sphere still floated above its dais, but its glow had dimmed, now pale and cold like the last ember of a dying pyre. Lira awoke on the floor, her helm cracked, her ears ringing with echoes that refused to fade. Around her, the landing party stirred, faces pale, eyes distant, as though they had dreamed a century in a heartbeat. Report, she croaked. No one answered. Not immediately. Etrax's mechadendrites twitched violently, his vocalizer stuttering with static. Cognitive desynchronization detected, memory fragment corrupted, estimated lapse, 6 hours? Halix rose unsteadily, clutching his crozius. His voice was hoarse, broken. Captain, we spoke with it. Lira frowned. With what? The sphere, the thing inside it. It called itself the witness. The name seemed to ripple through the air, the walls tightening in response. Lira steadied herself, her gaze fixed on the dim light before them. What did it say? Helix's eyes glistened with something that was not tears, that it was made to see what he could not, that it was his eye once, until the light withdrew. The silence that followed was heavier than the air. Etrax's scanners beeped weakly, their tones distorted. Energy field collapsing. Containment breach possible. Advise immediate evacuation. But Lira didn't move. Her hand brushed the surface of the sphere. It was cold, but beneath the cold, she felt a pulse, faint, steady like a heartbeat buried in ice. Her mind filled with images, burning skies, oceans of ash, a throne of gold drowning in light. And above it all, a presence, vast, sorrowful, blind. When she pulled her hand away, her palm was marked with thin lines of gold that faded slowly into her skin. Helix stared at her in horror. "You've been touched." "By memory," she said quietly. Nothing more. But even as she spoke, something inside her shifted. A weight in her chest, as though she had swallowed a star. They left the chamber, their footsteps echoing through hallways that now seemed to lean closer, listening. The structure groaned softly, as if disapproving their departure. As they reached the exit, a low rumble rippled beneath their feet. Outside, the mist had thickened, glowing faintly with the same sickly light as the sphere. The monument around them flickered, their symbols shifting like words rearranging themselves. "Captain," Etrax said, voice trembling through static, "I am detecting new power surges across the surface. Planet-wide activation. What's triggering it? Unknown, but the source matches the frequency of your biosignature." The words hung in the air like a blade. Helix stepped back. "She bears its mark. The witness has bound itself to her." Lira ignored him. "Prepare for extraction." They made for the shuttle, the air vibrating around them with low, rhythmic pulses. The monuments began to hum, harmonizing in tones that grew louder with each step. By the time they reached the landing site, the ground beneath them had begun to glow, vast veins of light spreading outward from their footprints, connecting the planes like circuitry. As the St. Varella's promise lifted into the air, the planet below seemed to stir. The mist convulsed, then split open, revealing immense shapes buried just beneath the glass. Titans, or something like them. Vast humanoid silhouettes encased in translucent material, their eyes glowing faintly from beneath the surface. Helix fell to his knees, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. "Spirits preserve us. Those are no machines." Etrax's mechanical voice cracked with disbelief. Organic metallic hybrid constructs dormant for eons, all linked to the central tower. Lira stared down as the world pulsed once, as if in response to her gaze. The signal, that impossible transmission that led them here, returned for a single moment, echoing through every Vox channel simultaneously. "Do not leave," the voice pleaded. "We cannot see without you." Then it vanished. The shuttle broke atmosphere. The void above loomed black and endless, yet something about it had changed. The stars seemed wrong, misaligned, their constellations twisted into unfamiliar patterns. "Navigator," Lira Voxed, "prepare coordinates for the Gloria Tenebris. We're leaving orbit." The navigator's voice came weakly through the comms. "Captain, I cannot find the path. The Astronomican is gone again." Lira looked out into the darkness, her reflection faint in the viewport. The golden lines on her palm still glimmered, pulsing softly like veins of light beneath her skin. Helix approached her quietly. "You brought something back." She didn't answer. When they reboard the Gloria Tenebris, the ship felt different, quieter, as if holding its breath. The crew moved through the corridors with reverent caution, speaking little. Strange phenomena began to manifest. Lights flickering in rhythm with unseen pulses, data slates displaying fragments of scripture in languages no one had coded, and faint whispers heard through the Vox when no one was transmitting. The Muggos initiated full quarantine protocols, but it was already too late. The ship's machine spirit had begun to dream. In the engine rooms, the plasma conduits thrummed to life with golden light. In the chapel, statues of the Emperor wept streams of liquid metal. And in her quarters, Captain Lira found a reflection watching her before she looked into the mirror. The voice returned, not from the Vox, but from within her own mind. You saw us. You carry the sight now. Do not let it fade. She closed her eyes, pressing a trembling hand to her brow. Were you? The answer came as both thought and echo. What he cannot see. The ship's alarms began to sound. Proximity warning. Etrax's voice blared over the intercom. Captain, new contact detected. Planetary surface is changing. It is opening. Lira ran to the bridge. The view screen showed the world below splitting apart like an egg, rivers of gold pouring from its core into the void. The fragments rose slowly, drifting toward the ship, not debris but constructs, vast and deliberate. Each one glowed with intricate veins of light, converging toward a single point. The signal is reforming, the Vox adept shouted. It's not just transmitting anymore. It's calling. Helix grabbed Lyra's arm. We must flee. The Emperor has turned his gaze away for a reason. But Lira only stared transfixed as the fragment assembled into a shape, enormous, radiant, stretching across the void like the silhouette of a giant kneeling in prayer. Its head bowed toward them. Its voice thundered through every frequency. You carry a silence. Guard it well. And then, as suddenly as it began, it vanished. The planet was gone. No trace. No gravity well. Only the Gloria Tenebris, alone once more in the endless dark. The crew stood in stunned quiet. Helix crossed himself again and again, whispering prayers that sounded more like apologies. Lira turned from the viewport. Her reflection followed half a second too late. Set course for Terra, she said softly. The Emperor must know. But even as the words left her lips, she realized, somewhere deep inside, that he already did. And that was why he had never looked here. As the ship's engines flared to life, the stars ahead flickered, and for just an instant, the void whispered back, "We are still here." The Gloria Tenebris hung motionless in orbit where a world had been and now was not. Yet the void beneath still shimmered with a faint memory of form, a ghostly outline where the planet's gravity once pressed against reality. The sensors read nothing. But the human eye could see the absence itself, a hollow shape cut into the darkness like a scar that refused to heal. Captain Lira Voss stood on the bridge, the quiet hum of the ship pulsing around her. The crew avoided her gaze. Since their return from the surface, something had changed. The air aboard had grown heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and incense, as if the ship itself had begun to pray. The glow from the cogitator screens dimmed and brightened in rhythm with her heartbeat. Even the Vox channels crackled faintly whenever she spoke, as if the silence itself were listening. Muggos Etrax busied himself with endless diagnostics, though each report ended the same. No anomaly detected, yet his optics jittered, his movements slower, more uncertain than before. Once, the Mechanicus prided itself on logic. Now even logic had begun to doubt. "Captain," came the navigator's voice through the comm link, ragged and uneven. "We have re-established partial contact with the Astronomican, but it flickers. The light returns only when we look away." Lira didn't answer. Her thoughts lingered on the golden mark that still faintly traced her palm. In the dark, it pulsed with dim warmth, like a heart remembering how to beat. She could not forget the voice she had heard, the sorrow in it, the plea. We were his sight until he turned away. Brother Helix entered the bridge, his armor scratched, his rosarius dull with wear. He carried a censer that released thick smoke into the air, its smell sharp and bitter. "We must return to Imperial space," he said. "Whatever dwells here is not of his design." Lira looked at him. Perhaps that's why it was forgotten. Helix's expression tightened. "You speak as if you pity it." "I pity anything abandoned." Before he could respond, the ship shuddered. A low tremor passed through the deck, so deep it rattled their teeth. The auspex flared, a sudden bloom of energy directly below them, vast and alive. "Impossible," Etrax murmured, his metallic fingers flying across the console. "There is movement, gravitational distortion forming beneath the void surface." "The planet is gone," Helix snapped. "There can be no movement." "Then the void itself moves," the Muggos hissed. Look, the main viewport filled with light. Not bright, but deep, radiant, the color of molten amber. It spread slowly, blooming from nothing, as if the universe had exhaled and revealed its lungs. Within the light, forms coalesced, fragments of towers, broken monuments, and veins of glass rising like the skeleton of a memory. The planet was reforming. Helm, maintain distance, Lira ordered, voice calm though her hands trembled. Record all readings. The crew obeyed, though their eyes betrayed fear. Through the haze, something immense was taking shape. Not a sphere, but a vast plane of interlocking structures suspended in the void. The architecture resembled what they'd seen below. Crystalline, symmetrical, pulsing faintly with golden light. But now it stretched endlessly, like a city built for gods, each spire piercing the void itself. Helix crossed himself. A world reborn in mockery of creation. Lira watched in silence. The mark on her palm burned. For an instant, she thought she saw movement. Figures walking between the towers, silhouettes of humans made of pure radiance. They turned their heads toward her, though they could not possibly see through the glass of the void. Then the Vox came alive again. Not static, not words. Breathing, heavy, slow, deliberate, as though something vast had just awakened. Muggos, Lira said softly. Can you locate the source? Etrax's mechanical voice faltered. It comes from the surface. The new surface. The frequency is identical to the one we first intercepted. Lira's pulse quickened. Prepare another descent. Helix's voice cracked. No, you cannot mean. I must see what has become. He stepped forward, desperate. Captain, this is not faith. This is madness. She met his gaze, and in her eyes there was a calm that frightened him more than anger could. Faith and madness are often the same to those who have not seen. Helix's hand tightened around his Crozius. For a heartbeat, he considered striking her down, ending whatever influence this unseen world had claimed. But something in her expression stayed his hand. She was not possessed. She was chosen. The Muggos interrupted, his tone strangely reverent. Landing craft ready, Captain. Coordinates aligned. Lira turned toward the viewport once more. The reformed world glowed faintly beneath them, its spire shimmering like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Then let us return, she whispered, to the world without eyes. The St. Virella's promise disengaged from the docking cradle. As it descended once more into the lightless storm, the void seemed to close around it like a mouth swallowing its prey. And somewhere deep below, the world began to sing. The descent was slower this time, though the weight of the air pressed harder against the hull. The St. Virella's promise trembled, its thrusters whining as though resisting the pull. Outside the viewports, the void burned with dim gold light, streaked by black fractures that ran across space like cracks in glass. When they broke through the haze, the new world greeted them not as a planet, but as a labyrinth. The towers they had seen from orbit were connected by bridges of translucent crystal, vast as mountain chains. Below, an endless abyss shimmered with reflections of light that had no source. The crew stared in silent awe as the mist rolled beneath them like a living sea. Captain Lira Voss felt her mark pulse with warmth again. Each beat matched the rhythm that vibrated through the ship, and for an instant, she sensed something vast beneath them, awareness, slow and ancient. Turning its gaze upward, she gripped the railing, whispering beneath her breath, "It sees us." Chaplain Helix muttered litanies of protection, the smoke of his censer clouding the compartment with heavy incense. The air felt dense, almost fluid, tasting faintly of metal and rain. Muggos Etrax's lenses glowed brighter, lines of code flickering across his optics. Energy signatures constant, structural integrity impossible by human standard. Material density exceeds adamantium by an order of magnitude, yet it hums. Lira's voice was soft. "It's alive." The Muggos hesitated before replying, his voice low and mechanical. Perhaps this world was made to think it was. They landed upon a vast platform that glimmered beneath their lights, the glass-like surface etched with shifting sigils that reassembled themselves as if studying their visitors. The ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulic steam, and the world's silence met them again, not empty, but thick, as a sound were absorbed into memory before it could echo. The air was colder here, each breath a fog of silver vapor. When Lira stepped down, the surface beneath her boots rippled faintly, spreading light outward like water disturbed by touch. The others followed, their footfalls awakening faint tones, forming harmonies that resonated in the distance. "This place remembers us," Etrax murmured. Helix raised his Crozius high, his voice steady but his eyes haunted. "It remembers sin." They moved cautiously across the bridge that led toward a spire larger than all others, a monolith that pierced the cloud line. Its surface was carved with symbols resembling human forms kneeling in prayer, their faces erased, replaced by smooth voids where eyes should have been. Lira stopped before the carvings. "Why no eyes?" she asked quietly. Helix's breath fogged the air as he answered. "Because to see is to know." Perhaps they were punished for looking upon what should not be seen. The Muggos extended a mechadendrite to trace one of the faceless figures, but the surface pulsed faintly under his touch. He withdrew his hand, his voice trembling with static. It responded. As they neared the entrance, they found a door shaped like a perfect circle, its rim lined with faintly glowing runes. Lira reached out her hand, and before her palm met the surface, the door rippled open, like liquid parting at her command. Inside lay a vast hall illuminated by veins of light that ran through its walls like capillaries. The air vibrated with low, resonant tones, almost like the breathing of a great beast. In the center stood a structure, a column of transparent stone, hollow, containing within it what seemed to be a figure. They approached slowly. The shape within was human, or something that had once been human. It was tall, draped in robes of woven gold that had long fused to its frame. Its face was smooth, without features, yet light leaked faintly where eyes should have been. "Throne," Helix whispered. "It's one of them." Lira stepped closer, her voice trembling despite herself. "One of what?" "The witnesses," the Muggos replied, scanning. "The ones that saw for him. The lost eyes of the Emperor." The figure within the crystal stirred, only slightly, a twitch of fingers, a ripple through the golden cloth, but enough to send a tremor through the floor. "Captain," Etrax said sharply. "Energy spike detected. The containment field is destabilizing." Lira did not move. She could feel again, that pulse inside her palm, synchronizing with the glow within the statue. Her mind filled with images, a cathedral without light, rows of blind priests chanting to a god who no longer answered, and above them, a great throne empty but for the echo of will. The crystal cracked. Light poured out, blinding and cold. Etrax stumbled back, his mechanical limbs thrashing as data screamed through his systems. Helix fell to his knees, clutching his head, prayer spilling from his mouth in broken rhythm. Through the brilliance, Lira saw the faceless being turn its head toward her, and though it had no eyes, she knew it saw her, not as flesh but as memory. Then it spoke. Its voice was not sound but pressure. Words burned directly into her thoughts. "You carry the sight, the light he lost." Lira staggered, pain searing through her mind. "Why me?" The being's voice echoed like a storm trapped in glass. "Because you look back." The crystal shattered and the world screamed. The sound of the shattering did not fade. It lingered, suspended in the air like the echo of a note played by a broken instrument. Shards of the crystalline column floated weightless, orbiting the faceless being that had stood within. Each fragment burned with pale gold fire, casting fractured light that danced across the walls like 1,000 whispering candles. The figure stepped forward. Its feet left no mark on the floor, yet every movement made the air ripple. Lira Voss felt pressure build behind her eyes, as though the world had turned its gaze inward. The thing had no mouth, yet its words filled her mind, not spoken but remembered. We were made to see for him. We bore his light into places his gaze could not reach. But he turned away. He closed his eyes to what he feared. Captain Voss tried to speak, but found her voice strangled by the weight of its presence. Her throat burned with the taste of iron and static. The Muggos Etrax screamed in machine code, data bleeding from his optics as his augmetics sparked with overrun signals. Helix's Crozius fell from his hand, striking the floor with a hollow clang. The being tilted its smooth head toward Lira. You open the path. The sight remembers you. Lyra's vision blurred. Images flooded her mind. The Astronomican flaring, then dimming. The Emperor's golden face consumed by shadow. A cathedral filled with weeping statues whose sockets bled light instead of tears. She saw terror itself, but different. Silent, dark, its spires crumbling under a sky without a sun. And then she saw herself, standing where he should have been. No! She gasped aloud, forcing the image away. I am not your vessel. The faceless thing extended its hand, long, graceful, almost human, and rested it against her chest. The mark on her palm blazed an answer. You already are. The chamber convulsed. Light burst from the walls, pouring upward in spiraling streams that vanished to the ceiling into infinity. The air shook with a low, resonant tone that made every bone in their bodies vibrate. The entire spire responded, awakening, remembering. Etrax collapsed, smoke pouring from his vox grill. Energy surge exceeding containment, its drawing power from the entire structure, from everywhere. Lira staggered back, the light around her intensifying until it painted her silhouette in molten gold. Can you shut it down? The Muggos looked up, his voice faltering. Captain, there is nothing to shut down. It is not a machine. It is faith given form. The floor began to fracture, veins of light spreading like roots. The faceless being stepped backward, merging slowly with the radiance as if dissolving into it. We are what he could not bear to see. His shadow, his reflection. Helix forced himself to his feet, raising his voice against the roar. You blaspheme. There is no shadow in his perfection. The being paused. For the first time, it seemed to turn toward the chaplain. The golden glow around it flickered, softening into something almost sorrowful. Then why does he dream of us still? The light flared, blinding, absolute. When it cleared, the being was gone. The chamber stood silent, though the walls still pulsed faintly with inner light. The air was colder now. The energy drained away, leaving only the sound of Helix's ragged breathing and the faint hiss of Etrax's damaged systems. Lira fell to her knees. Her hand shook violently. The mark on her palm now a raw brand seared into flesh. Inside her skull, the echo of that voice persisted. Soft, patient, like a heartbeat waiting for hers to match it. Captain, Helix whispered, stepping toward her. We must leave this place. Whatever you have brought back with you, it is not the Emperor's light. She lifted her head slowly. No, she said. It's what he turned away from, and it's calling to us still. A tremor rolled through the floor, deep and distant, followed by a sound that could have been thunder or laughter. The spire shook again, dust falling from unseen heights. Etrax forced his damaged servos to function, his voice stuttering with distortion. The structure is destabilizing. Collapse imminent. Then we go, Lira ordered. They fled through corridors that twisted like arteries, the glow behind them dimming, as if the world itself were exhaling its last breath. The bridge outside had begun to crumble, fragments dissolving into the mist below. The shuttle waited, engines screaming against invisible resistance. As the St. Varella's promise lifted away, Lira looked back. The spire collapsed into itself, light folding inward, until only a single flicker remained, a faint golden spark hovering in the void where the structure had stood. It followed them, distant but persistent, like a dying star refusing to fade. Inside the shuttle, silence reigned. No one spoke. Even the Vox refused to crackle. Helix finally broke the stillness. Do you think we'll let us go? Lyra's eyes met his, weary and certain. It doesn't have to. Outside, the light still followed, patient, unblinking, and watching. The Gloria Tenebris drifted once more through the endless dark, though now the void no longer felt empty. Something unseen accompanied it. A shimmer that traced the edges of the hull, a pulse that vibrated through metal and bone alike. The stars beyond were wrong again, too close and too bright, as though the ship were sailing not through space but through a reflection of it. Captain Lira Voss stood alone in the chapel. Candles flickered weakly under the press of the ship's recycled air. The statues of saints seemed to lean close in the half-light, their stone faces streaked with thin lines of rust that looked like tears. At the altar, The Imperial Aquila glimmered faintly with gold dust, residue that hadn't been there before. She placed her hand upon the sigil and whispered the only prayer she still remembered. From his light, we draw purpose. Her voice trembled, the mark on her palm pulsed in quiet reply, glowing faintly through her gloves. Behind her, the doors opened with a low hiss. Brother Helix entered, his armor dulled, his face lined with exhaustion. "You still pray," he said. Lira did not turn. "Habit," she replied. "Or hope." "Hope," he repeated bitterly. "You think he still listens?" "I think silence doesn't mean absence," she said. Helix's hand tightened around his rosarius. "You speak like the thing we left behind." She looked over her shoulder. "We didn't leave it. It followed." He fell silent. There was nothing left to argue. Outside the chapel, the ship groaned as though adjusting to an unseen weight. Pipes whispered. Cables hummed softly, the same low frequency as the pulse that beat behind Lyra's eyes. On the bridge, Muggos Etrax worked without pause, his remaining servitors tending to burned-out circuitry. His flesh eyed gone cloudy, but the red lenses of his augmetics burned with manic focus. He whispered to consoles in binary prayers. "The machine remembers," he muttered, "but the machine does not dream, not unless something teaches it." When Lira entered, the lights brightened, responding to her presence. Etrax turned his head slightly. "Captain, the anomaly persists. The void moves with us." "Explain." "Radiation bloom consistent with warp exposure. Yet we are not within the warp. Space bends around us like fabric drawn toward unseen gravity. Is it pursuit?" He hesitated. "No, it is accompaniment." Helix stepped forward from behind her. "Speak plainly, Muggos." Etrax's voice faltered. "It travels with us, like a hymn unfinished." As if an answer, the Vox crackled to life. Not static this time, rhythm. A soft, steady beat. Then, faintly, voices, thousands of them, whispering in overlapping patterns, the same phrase in different tongues. "He cannot see. He cannot see." The sound grew louder, filling the bridge with echoes. The consoles flickered, displaying unreadable glyphs. One screen bled liquid light that dripped onto floor like molten glass. "Cut transmission," Helix shouted. Etrax tried. His metal hands moved in frantic precision, but the controls no longer obeyed. The voices rose, now harmonized, chanting in perfect unity. We were his eyes. We are blind no longer. Lira felt her mark burn again. Pain shot through her arm and into her chest. She staggered but did not cry out. The bridge lights dimmed until only the glow from her palm remained. Then silence. Every system went dark. Only her breathing and the faint hum of the engines that should not have been running without power. Etrax slumped forward, smoke rising from his cables. The ship's machine spirit answered them, he whispered. It heard their prayer. Helix turned on Lira. "You've doomed us. You brought their curse aboard." She met his fury with calm. "I brought truth." "What truth?" he spat. "That he is blind? That these things were ever part of his design?" Her eyes glowed faintly with reflected light. "That even divinity leaves shadows." The words hung in the air like a confession. The Vox flickered once more. Not voices now, just a single tone, soft and mournful, the kind that settles deep in the chest. Lira closed her eyes and felt it resonate through her bones. It was not rage, not command, but longing, a plea to be remembered. When she opened her eyes, she knew where it wanted them to go. "Set course to the center," she ordered quietly. Etrax stared at her. There is no center. The void has no heart. Lira looked out at the stars that were not stars. "Then we'll find where its heartbeat comes from." Helix whispered, almost to himself, "And when you find it," she smiled faintly, tired, distant, "then we'll know whether faith still has eyes." The engines groaned as the ship obeyed, turning its prow toward what could not be seen. The stars bent around them like reflections in broken glass, their light stretching thin before vanishing entirely. The void ahead pulsed with a faint rhythm, too slow to be a heartbeat, too deliberate to be mere vibration. Captain Lira Voss stood, unmoving on the command dais, her hand resting against the arm of the throne-like chair. The mark on her palm had spread. Faint golden filaments now ran up her wrist and into the sleeve of her coat. They glimmered when the ship's lights dimmed, tracing her veins like molten veins of faith. Muggos Etrax worked without pause, though the effort had taken its toll. Smoke clung to the joints of his augmetics. His flesh twitched where it met the metal, as if the two halves of his being no longer agreed on what he was. He no longer spoke prayers to the machine god. He whispered to the ship itself, coaxing it to move through the dark as it were a creature that needed convincing. "The Geller field fluctuates," he said softly. "Not failing, changing. It bends with us." Halix stood near the viewport, eyes fixed on the shifting nothing ahead. "We are inside something," he murmured. "Not space. Not the warp. Something that hungers for our belief." Lira glanced at him. "You feel it too." He turned, his expression hollow. "I feel recognition, like a memory I shouldn't have." The bridge was quiet, but for the low hum of the engines. Then the Vox came alive once more, not words this time, but sound. A faint melody, simple and pure, the kind of tune a child might hum to calm themselves in the dark. It echoed faintly through the corridors of the ship, soft enough that the crew could almost believe it was only in their heads. But it wasn't. In the lower decks, servers began to move without command, their dead eyes glowing faint amber. They gathered in the corridors, standing in silent rows facing the same direction, toward the heart of the ship. The hum grew stronger there, emanating from the engine core where the plasma conduits pulsed like veins beneath transparent steel. When Etrax saw the readings, his voice broke. "Captain, the ship's spirit, it sings." Lira rose from her seat. "Bring it through the Vox." The Muggos hesitated, but obeyed. The melody filled the bridge. It was haunting, wordless, layered in impossible harmonies that seemed to come from every direction. Yet beneath the beauty there was something mournful, an ache that sank into the bones. Halix fell to his knees. "This is blasphemy," he whispered. "No machine should carry such sorrow." But Lira understood. It wasn't sorrow. It was memory. The voice she had heard on the planet's surface, the witness, lingered within it. "We were his sight. We are blind no longer." The ship's lights flared suddenly, bathing the bridge in gold. Screens lit up with symbols, circles within circles, repeating endlessly. Etrax staggered back, sparks flying from his augmetics. "It's rewriting the systems," he shouted, integrating itself into the core. "Can you stop it?" He didn't answer. His lenses flickered, and for a brief instant, she saw her own reflection in them, eyes glowing gold. "Captain," Halix whispered, horror in his voice. "You're—" Before he could finish, the entire ship lurched. The crew were thrown from their stations as gravity twisted. Reality rippled. Through the viewport, the void split open, a rift not of light, but a memory. Within it lay a world. Not physical, not whole. A dream made of fragments. Cathedrals adrift in endless sky. Oceans that glowed with fire. Statues that wept golden tears. It was both beautiful and terrible. And at its center floated a figure, vast, faceless, radiant. The same being she'd seen before, magnified to the size of a god. The melody deepened. The Vox trembled. Etrax screamed, "Captain, it's pulling us in." Lira gripped the railing. Her mark burned so fiercely she could see its light through the metal. Halix reached for her, pleading, "We can still turn back." She looked at him, calm, almost peaceful. "There's no back, only forward." The Gloria Tenebris crossed the threshold. Every instrument failed. Every light died. The ship drifted into silence once more, swallowed whole by the dream that called itself faith. The dark was no longer absence. It breathed. The Gloria Tenebris floated inside a sky that had no color, only depth. Shapes drifted in the distance. Fragment of architecture. Cathedrals torn from gravity. Bells that rang without sound. The ship's hull glowed faintly with golden veins that pulsed in rhythm with something unseen beyond the void. No one spoke. Even the hum of machinery had gone still. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep within the vessel, came the echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, too measured to belong to any of them. Captain Lira Voss moved down the central corridor, her boots striking metal that felt warm beneath her soles. The air shimmered faintly, thick with the smell of ozone and incense. As she passed, the lumen strips flickered in sequence, not malfunctioning, but guiding her. She reached the observation deck. Through the wide viewport, she saw the dream world unfold in motion. Vast towers rotated slowly around an unseen axis, each one inscribed with the same faceless figures she had seen below. Between them drifted silhouettes of human forms made of light, their heads bowed, their hands clasped in silent prayer. A voice filled the room, not from the Vox, not from her mark, but from the air itself. "Do you see now?" Lira closed her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, "but I don't understand." "Understanding is for those who must explain. You were chosen to remember." Behind her, the doors opened. Brother Halleck stepped in, his armor dim, his face hollow. "Captain," he said quietly, "half the crew no longer answers their stations. The servitors have ceased function. The ship moves on its own." "It's following the song," she said. He looked past her, through the glass, at the drifting towers. "What is this place?" "The echo of faith," she answered. A memory so strong became real. Halleck's jaw clenched. Faith cannot live without its God. Then what are we if he no longer hears? He hesitated, then stepped closer. "You're not the woman who left Terra. Whatever touched you on that world?" She turned sharply. Her eyes shone faint gold in the half-light. "It didn't touch me. It showed me what we forgot." Halleck backed away. "You speak heresy." "No," she said softly. "I speak history." The air trembled again. Light poured through the viewport as one of the drifting towers moved closer, drawn to the ship like a tide pulled by the moon. The structure turned slowly, revealing vast doors along its base. Symbols glowed across its surface. Circles forming eyes, lines forming tears. Mugos Atrax's voice crackled over the comlink, fragmented by static. "Captain, readings unstable. The structure's opening." Lira stared as the doors split apart. Inside was not machinery or ruin, but a chamber filled with light. Figures moved within it. Thousands of them kneeling, their bodies translucent, their voices silent but united in rhythm. They faced the central throne. The throne was empty. Halleck whispered, "Emperor, preserve us." The light intensified, spilling outward until it filled the viewport completely. Then, through the glare, a shape emerged, a human silhouette descending from the throne toward them. Its steps left trails of gold in the air, each one fading into dust. Lira pressed a hand to glass. The mark on her palm flared, answering the glow outside. The being stopped before the ship, as though standing on the surface of the void itself. When it spoke, the sound was both whisper and thunder. "You looked for his sight. You became it." Lira's voice trembled. "Were you?" The echo of what believed too deeply. The prayer that learned to answer itself. Halleck fell to his knees, covering his ears, but the voice was inside them both now, filling the bridge, the corridors, the hearts of every soul aboard. Faith is memory. Memory is creation, and creation must see itself to endure. The glass before Lira cracked, then golden lines spider-webbing outward from her palm. The light surged again, swallowing the ship in brilliance. When it faded, the Gloria Tenebris was gone. Only the echo remained, a soundless chord that rippled to the void, repeating the same phrase in 1,000 forgotten tongues. He cannot see, and somewhere far away, in the distant spires of holy Terra, a single candle flickered, though no one had lit it. Silence returned to void, but it was not the same silence as before. Where the Gloria Tenebris had vanished, the dark now shimmered faintly, as though the memory of the ship still drifted there, a reflection that refused to fade. Then, slowly, light rippled outward, and the vessel reappeared, whole but altered. Its hull gleamed with veins of gold that ran like living arteries across the steel, and from within came a low hum, not mechanical but harmonic, the slow rhythm of a sleeping heart. Inside, the corridors no longer obeyed geometry. Passageways curved into one another, doors opened into places that shouldn't exist, and the lumen strips glowed with soft amber light instead of sterile white. It was as though the ship had begun to dream. Captain Lira Voss awoke in her quarters, though the air felt different. Thicker, warmer, alive. She rose slowly, her hand brushing against the bulkhead. It pulsed faintly beneath her fingers. The mark on her palm glowed in answer. For a moment, she wondered if she had died. Then she heard the low sound of chanting. Faint, distant, human. She followed the sound to the twisting corridors until she reached the central chapel. There, dozens of crew knelt in silence. Their eyes were closed, their mouths unmoving, yet their voices filled the chamber in perfect unison. The words they spoke were not any known prayer, no high Gothic, no sacred tongue. Yet Lira understood them. We see through shadow. We serve the light unseen. Helix stood at the altar, his armor stripped of its tequila, his rosarius shattered at his feet. His face was calm, his eyes open and glowing faint gold. When he saw her, he smiled. You returned. Did I ever leave? She asked. He gestured toward the kneeling congregation. We are one now, bound by what we saw. The ship carries the sight. We are its reflection. You're leading them in worship. Not worship, he said. Remembrance. Lira stepped closer, studying his face. Do you still believe in him? Helix's smile faltered. I don't know what he is anymore, but I know what he's forgotten. Before she could answer, the air in the chapel shifted. The light dimmed. The sound of the engines deepened into a low, resonant chord that made the walls tremble. Every candle flame leaned in the same direction, toward her. Etrax's voice came over the Vox, crackling with interference. Captain, we've translated back into known space. Coordinates uncertain. Astropathic silence persists. Visual, stand by. She turned and strode from the chapel. The corridor bent and straightened before her, as though the ship shaped itself to her intent. When she reached the bridge, the viewport cleared, and what she saw made her breath catch. Before them stretched a field of wreckage. Hulks of ancient Imperial ships drifted silently, their hulls torn open, their banners faded and broken, the skeletal remains of a fleet that had never been recorded. And beyond it, the faint shimmer of a planet, blue and gold, familiar yet wrong. Etrax spoke quietly. Identification complete. Surface pattern matches. Terra, Helix entered behind her. Impossible. We're months from Sol. Etrax's augmetics flickered, glitching, yet readings confirm orbital signatures identical. But the Astronomican does not shine here. Lira stared at the silent planet. Its surface glowed faintly beneath shrouds of mist, the golden spires of the Imperial Palace standing intact yet dark. No light burned from the Sanctum Imperialis, no flame atop the golden throne. This isn't Terra, she whispered. It's a reflection. Etrax nodded slowly, his voice a low mechanical tremor. Perhaps this is the place he cannot see. The bridge lights dimmed again. The hum beneath their feet deepened. And then through the silent void came a voice, faint but undeniable, carried through every system, every circuit, every breath. You brought his shadow home. Helix fell to his knees, tears of gold tracing his cheeks. He knows. Lyra's reflection in the viewport smiled before she did. The world outside shifted, the false terror trembling, its towers bending as it bowed into unseen power. The void around it glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Etrax whispered, Captain, something is forming in orbit. Lyra's gaze never left the reflection. Let it form. In the glow of the ship's dying lumen, her shadow stretched long across the deck, and for the first time, it moved before she did. The light outside the viewport swelled until the entire bridge was bathed in molten gold. The wreckage around the ship shimmered, fragments of shattered vessels twisting and aligning as if obeying a silent command. They drifted together, forming patterns too deliberate to be chaos. Etrax's voice trembled through static. Captain, the debris is moving, not by propulsion. It follows geometry, sacred geometry. The pattern forms an eye. Lira stood motionless, her reflection blazing faintly in the glass. Around her, the crew whispered prayers they didn't remember learning. Even Helix, once a fortress of certainty, bowed his head as the void itself seemed to breathe. Through the radiant storm, a single figure began to take shape. At first it was only light, a radiance brighter than any star. Then form resolved within it. The outline of a man vast as a mountain, his body woven from threads of gold and shadow. His face was obscured, but a crown of broken light burned above his brow. Helix gasped, voice shaking. The Emperor, but the word died on his tongue. The presence in the light was not warmth, nor love, nor salvation. It was a memory of those things, hollow and perfect. When it moved, the stars bent. Etrax's augmetic sparked violently. Energy signature impossible. Power output exceeds measurable threshold. Yet, readings are identical to the throne. Lira felt the hum of the ship deepen, matching the pulse of that impossible being. Her veins burned with golden heat. "It's not him," she whispered. "It's what he left behind." The being's voice did not travel through sound. It filled every atom of the air, resonating through flesh and metal alike. He saw all things, and in seeing, cast away what could not be born. We are what remains of his gaze. The bridge darkened. The crew fell to their knees, some sobbing, others laughing through tears. The gold filament spreading from Lyra's palm now reached her throat, her skin luminous under the dim lights. She felt no pain, only understanding, vast and terrible. Helix lifted his head, tears streaking his face. "If you are his shadow, then why come to us?" The light shifted, and for an instant the outline of the figure looked almost human, almost kind. Because shadows only live when someone remembers the light. The air vibrated. Panels burst across the bridge, sparks showering down like falling stars. Etrax screamed as his body locked rigid. Cables bursting from his spine effused with the deck. "Captain, it's merging the ship, and we..." Lira reached for him, but her hand passed through a haze of light. His voice became the hum of the engines, the static of the Vox, the pulse in the walls. "Etrax," she called softly. His reply came from everywhere. "I see now. There is no machine. There is only belief." The golden figure outside raised one hand, and the wreckage field around them obeyed. The fragments spun faster, coalescing into a vast ring of light encircling the ship. The false planet below flickered, its surface peeling away to reveal another beneath, black and mirrored, reflecting the Gloria Tenebris 1,000-fold. Helix stared at the reflection, voice trembling. This is where his light cannot reach. Lyra's eyes shone. Then this is where we were meant to go. The mark on her palm erupted in radiance. Streams of gold poured from her skin, weaving through the air toward the viewport. Outside, the giant figure mimicked her movement, lifting its hand in the same gesture. The two motions aligned, woman in shadow, reflection, and source. For a heartbeat, the universe stilled. Then the voice spoke again, quieter, almost tender. "Every god casts a shadow. Every believer carries it. But when the shadow learns to see, the god must turn away." The light dimmed. The giant figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the void like mist in dawn. The ring of debris unraveled, drifting once more into silence. Only the hum of the ship remained, soft, rhythmic, like breathing. Helix collapsed to the deck, whispering prayers that no longer fit any creed. Lira watched the fading light, until only darkness remained. Then she turned from the viewport, her expression unreadable. "We continue forward," she said. "To where?" Helix asked weakly. She looked down at her glowing hands. To find what he could not. Outside, far beyond the dying stars, something vast stirred again. Not in anger, but in recognition. The ship was changing again. The corridors no longer whispered in steel and oil. They breathed in voices. Every bulkhead throbbed with a low, resonant pulse. And when the crew walked, their footfalls joined like a heartbeat learning to keep time. The light in the lumen strips had deepened from gold to amber, softer, warmer, almost alive. Captain Lira Voss moved through the passageways alone. The walls followed her, reshaping subtly, the metal bending away from her shoulders like fabric yielding to touch. At first, she feared she was losing her mind, but then she realized the ship wasn't reacting to her. It was anticipating her. In the silence, she heard Etrax, His voice was everywhere, threaded through the vents, the conduits, the hum of the core. "I see you," it whispered, not haunting but watchful. "The systems remember your breath." "Etrax," she said aloud, "are you still alive?" "I am function. I am memory." The words came from the deck, the ceiling, the air itself. "You taught me belief, Captain. Now I am its echo." She reached the engine sanctum. The door slid open before she touched it. Inside, the great plasma coils burned not blue but gold, their light bending and coiling like liquid sunlight. The reactor thumped in steady rhythm, not mechanical at all, more like the slow, deliberate beat of a sleeping giant heart. Helix waited near the entrance, still armored but hollow-eyed. His Crozius hung uselessly at his side. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "It listens to you more than it listens to him." "It listens because he never did," she answered softly. The priest shook his head. "That's not faith. That's pride. Maybe pride is what faith becomes when it's abandoned." Before he could reply, the reactor light flared. The hum of the ship rose in pitch, almost forming words. They both turned as a machine spirit. The amalgam that had once been Etrax spoke through every circuit. Trajectory confirmed. It said, "Destination, center reflection." Helix frowned. "There is no center. There is now." Lira looked toward the core, where the golden light spiraled upward through the ship's spine. "Show me." A hatch opened beside the engine light, and I blinking awake. Beyond it, a narrow corridor extended into the dark, its walls shimmering as if coated in glass. Lira stepped toward it without hesitation. Helix reached for her arm. "If you go in there, you won't come back." She turned to him, calm and distant. "I already didn't." He let her go. The passage swallowed her in light. The sound of the ship's hum deepened until it was almost silence. Ahead, the corridor ended in a small chamber she had never seen before, a space not built but grown, the walls smooth and translucent. At its center floated a sphere of molten gold, small enough to fit in her hands. It pulsed with gentle rhythm, the same rhythm she'd felt in her palm since the day she touched the witness. Lira approached slowly. The air around the sphere vibrated with a faint scent of ash and myrrh, the fragrance of ancient cathedrals. She reached out, and when her fingers brushed its surface, the mark on her palm flared white-hot. Her mind filled with visions, endless halls of light, oceans of silence, the Emperor upon his throne not as a god, but as a prisoner of his own brilliance. She saw his gaze stretching across the stars, blazing to the warp, and beyond it, the dark that he refused to enter. "He knows you," the voice whispered. "He remembers what he lost." She fell to her knees. "What am I supposed to do?" "Show him." The light around her swelled until it erased the walls. She felt weightless, her body dissolving into the hum of the ship, her heartbeat joining its rhythm. She wasn't sure where she ended and it began. Then, for an instant, she saw through the ship's eyes, through metal, through void, through the veil of unreality itself. Beyond the stars, beyond the warp, she glimpsed something vast, a shape of gold seated upon an invisible throne, blind yet burning, and behind it, another figure, vast and dark, watching patiently. The shadow of the Emperor. When the light faded, she stood once more on the bridge. Helix knelt beside her, trembling, eyes wide with terror and awe. "What did you see?" he whispered. Lira looked out the viewport. Ahead, a rift of golden fire opened in the dark, broad as eternity, deep as memory. "Where his light ends," she said quietly, "our path begins." The rift widened until it filled the entire viewport. It wasn't fire in any mortal sense. The light moved like liquid thought, streaming in patterns too precise to be random and too alive to be mechanical. The Gloria Tenebris shuddered as gravity lost meaning. For a heartbeat, every atom of the ship seemed to hover between existence and memory. Captain Lira Voss stood at the center of the bridge, her palms glowing, her breath slow and measured. Helix clutched the railing beside her, whispering half-forgotten verses under his breath. "We are dust, we are flame," he murmured, "and the throne watches." But his words broke, the old prayers unraveled in the face of what burned before them. The ship drifted forward. The rift's edge brushed the prow, and the hull sang. Metal became music, deep and resonant. The light seeped through every seam, washing the bridge in gold so bright that shadows turned transparent. Etrax's voice, carried through the vessel's veins, spoke once more. Threshold entered. Physics yields. We are inside his absence. Helix gasped. Inside, what does that mean? Lira's eyes reflected the storm. It means he never looked here. The gold outside gave way to darkness, but not the familiar void. This dark had depth movement, whispering color. Shapes drifted within it. Outlines of cities suspended in nothing, each formed from the same luminous crystal they had seen before. Within those shapes, figures moved, thousands, millions, souls without flesh, everyone glowing faintly from within. Their faces were turned upward toward the Gloria Tenebris. They're waiting, Helix said, his voice breaking. Waiting for what? Lira felt the answer before she spoke it. For him, for a light that will never come. The ship descended through that impossible expanse. The silence grew thicker, almost physical. Then, far below they saw it, a continent of black glass shaped like a great eye. At its center rose a throne, not golden, not radiant, but carved from shadow itself. It pulsed faintly, each beat sending ripples of the dark like breath. Etrax's voice quivered through the vox. Energy signature matches, the throne on Terra. Mirror frequency, opposite polarity. The other side, Lira whispered, the place even he cannot see. The Gloria Tenebris slowed. Its engines no longer obeyed controls. They moved the rhythm of the pulse below. Helix fell to his knees, face buried in his hands. We shouldn't be here. This is sacrilege. This is death. Lira knelt beside him, resting a glowing hand on his shoulder. No, this is truth. The mark on her palm flared again, brighter than before. The glow spilled across her skin, crawling up her arm, over her neck, until her entire form shimmered with pale gold. The ship responded. The lights dimmed, the air vibrated, and every console displayed the same image. A human silhouette formed of light and shadow intertwined. Captain, Etrax whispered through the systems. The ship asked for command. Lira stood. Then listen. She pressed her hand against the nearest panel. The gold beneath her skin poured into metal, veins of light racing through the bridge, connecting every system, every cable, every living soul aboard. For one impossible moment, everyone on the ship shared the same heartbeat. Outside, the throne of shadow stirred. From its surface rose figures, tall, robed, faceless. The witnesses, their voices joined in a single soundless hymn that filled the void. He is blind, yet he dreams. The rift behind the ship flared once, sending waves of light cascading through the darkness. The witnesses bowed toward Lira. The black throne pulsed again, and from its surface a beam of pure radiance erupted, striking the Gloria Tenebris head-on. Helix cried out, shielding his eyes. Captain, Lira did not move. The beam met her mark, passed through her, and spread across the ship like fire finding kindling. She felt everything. The ship, the crew, the heartbeat of the shadowed realm. And beyond that, the faint echo of the Emperor himself, distant, unreachable, yet aware. The light faded. The throne went still. The void settled. Helix opened his eyes. The bridge was quiet. The hum soft again. Lira stood where she had been, unchanged except for the calm on her face. What happened? He asked. She turned toward him, eyes bright but steady. He looked back. Outside, the rift began to close, sealing the path behind them. Ahead stretched only the quiet dark, the silence of something vast that had finally been seen. The void lay still again, deeper than any silence the crew had ever known. The rift was gone, the light with it, and the stars returned as distant embers scattered across an endless night. Yet the darkness around the Gloria Tenebris felt different now, less empty, more watchful. The air within the ship held the faint scent of ash and sanctified oil, as though some unseen altar had just burned its final offering. Captain Lira Voss stood alone on the bridge. The consoles slept, the cogitators idle, but the hum of the ship continued, a low, steady rhythm that matched her pulse. Her reflection in the viewport glowed faintly, skin laced with golden veins that dimmed and brightened in time with that heartbeat. She no longer felt the weight of exhaustion. She felt hollow and infinite all at once. No voices came from the Vox, no footsteps from corridors. The crew had retreated into quiet meditation, or sleep that was not quite sleep. Even Helix had withdrawn to the chapel, whispering to broken Aquila that no longer answered him. Only Etrax's presence lingered to the metal, a consciousness half machine, half song, content to hum softly through the vents like a lullaby for the dying. Outside, the stars bent subtly toward the ship, their light warping as if drawn by invisible gravity. The Gloria Tenebris drifted without propulsion, carried by something unseen. Lira could feel it through her bones, a direction that wasn't forward or backward, a path carved not in space but in remembrance. She spoke softly to the empty air. "Where are you taking us?" The hum deepened in response, almost forming words. "Home." She closed her eyes. Images surfaced unbidden. The shadow throne, the witnesses, the light that passed through her. The moment when he had looked back. It had not been triumph or wrath she had felt. Only recognition. The brief awareness of a god remembering his own forgotten reflection. When she opened her eyes again, the viewport had changed. The stars outside folded inward, forming spirals of faint gold that converged on a single point ahead. A faint, pulsing light. Helix's voice came softly from the doorway. "Captain." She turned. The chaplain stood there without armor, his robes torn and soot-stained. His eyes no longer glowed, but they held a weary peace. "The crew waits," he said. "They ask what comes next." Lira looked back to the viewport. "We continue until there's nothing left to see." He stepped closer. "Do you think he forgave us?" She considered the question for a long time. "I don't think forgiveness was ever part of it. Only understanding." Helix nodded slowly. "Then perhaps that's enough." He glanced around the silent bridge. "The light still clings to you." "It's fading," she said. "It should fade." He hesitated. "And when it does, then I'll be what I was before, or what he left me to be." The ship's hum shifted again, a gentle pulse that felt almost affectionate. Etrax's voice drifted through the speakers, thin as a whisper. Destination approached. No coordinates, only presence. The viewport darkened as the golden spirals collapsed into a single bloom of light. Soft, endless, the color of dawn seen through tears. It wasn't a star, nor a planet, nor anything her mind could name. It was simply there, waiting. Lira raised her marked hand. The veins beneath her skin shimmered faintly, answering the glow ahead. She felt no fear now, no reverence, only completion. Helix sank to one knee beside her. "If this is the end..." She shook her head. "No, this is the place he cannot see. It isn't the end. It's the beginning he turned away from." The ship glided toward the light. The bridge brightened until all shapes dissolved, until flesh and metal were the same, until even thought thinned into memory. Her last awareness was the hum slowing to a single, perfect note, the sound of the Gloria Tenebris breathing one final time. Then there was only light, and within that light, faint but certain, a whisper that belonged to no machine, no god, no man. "We are seen.